In Bethlehem, it is now proposed that non-Muslims be subjected to the al-Jizya tax, the historic levy imposed on dhimmis or unbelievers under the old Ottoman Empire. Female employees of the municipality are forbidden to greet male visitors with a handshake. In Gaza, a young woman named Yusra al-Azami was shot dead in April 2005 for the crime of sitting unchaperoned in a car with her fiancé. The young man escaped with only a vicious beating. The leaders of the Hamas Vice and Virtue Squad justified this casual murder and torture by saying that there had been suspicion of immoral behavior. In once secular Palestine, mobs of sexually repressed young men are conscripted to snoop around parked cars and given permission to do what they like. I once heard the late Abba Eban, one of Israel's more polished and thoughtful diplomats and statesmen, give a talk in New York. The first thing to strike the eye about the Israeli-Palestinian dispute, he said, was the ease of its solubility. From this arresting start, he went on to say, with the authority of a former foreign minister and UN representative, that the essential point was a simple one. Two peoples of roughly equivalent size had a claim to the same land. The solution was, obviously, to create two states side by side. Surely something so self-evident was within the wit of man to encompass. And so it would have been, decades ago, if the messianic rabbis and mullahs and priests could have been kept out of it. But the exclusive claims to God-given authority, made by hysterical clerics on both sides, and further stoked by Armageddon-minded Christians, who hoped to bring on the apocalypse, preceded by the death or conversion of all Jews, have made the situation insufferable, and put the whole of humanity in the position of hostage to a quarrel that now features the threat of nuclear war. Religion poisons everything. As well as a menace to civilization, it has become a threat to human survival. To come last to Baghdad. This is one of the greatest centres of learning and culture in history. It was here that some of the lost works of Aristotle and other Greeks, lost because the Christian authorities had burned some, suppressed others, and closed the schools of philosophy on the grounds that there could have been no useful reflections on morality before the preaching of Jesus, were preserved, retranslated, and transmitted via Andalusia back to the ignorant Christian West. Baghdad's libraries and poets and architects were renowned. Many of these attainments took place under Muslim caliphs, who sometimes permitted and as often repressed their expression. But Baghdad also bears the traces of ancient Chaldean and Nestorian Christianity, and was one of the many centres of the Jewish diaspora. Until the late 1940s, it was home to as many Jews as were living in Jerusalem. I am not here going to elaborate a position on the overthrow of Saddam Hussein in April 2003. I shall simply say that those who regarded his regime as a secular one are deluding themselves. It is true that the Ba'ath Party was founded by a man named Michel Aflaq, a sinister Christian with a sympathy for fascism, and it is also true that membership of that party was open to all religions, though its Jewish membership was, I have every reason to think, limited. However, at least since his calamitous invasion of Iran in 1979, which led to furious accusations from the Iranian theocracy that he was an infidel, Saddam Hussein had decked out his whole rule, which was based in any case on a tribal minority of the Sunni minority, as one of piety and jihad. The Syrian Ba'ath Party, also based on a confessional fragment of society aligned with the Alawite minority, has likewise enjoyed a long and hypocritical relationship with the Iranian mullahs. Saddam had inscribed the words Allahu Akbar, God is great, on the Iraqi flag. He had sponsored a huge international conference of holy warriors and mullahs, and maintained very warm relations with their other chief state sponsor in the region, namely the genocidal government of Sudan. He had built the largest mosque in the region and named it the Mother of All Battles Mosque, complete with a Quran written in blood that he claimed to be his own. When launching his own genocidal campaign against the mainly Sunni people of Kurdistan, a campaign that involved the thoroughgoing use of chemical atrocity weapons and the murder and deportation of hundreds of thousands of people, he had called it Operation Anfal, borrowing by this term a Quranic justification, the spoils of Surah number 8, for the despoilment and destruction of non-believers. When the coalition forces crossed the Iraqi border, they found Saddam's army dissolving like a sugar lump in hot tea, but met with some quite tenacious resistance from a paramilitary group, stiffened with foreign jihadists, called the Fedayeen Saddam. One of the jobs of this group was to execute anybody who publicly welcomed the Western intervention, and some revolting public hangings and mutilations were soon captured on video for all to see. At a minimum, it can be agreed by all that the Iraqi people had endured much in the preceding 35 years of war and dictatorship, that the Saddam regime could not have gone on forever as an outlaw system within international law, and therefore that, whatever objections there might be to the actual means of regime change, the whole society deserved a breathing space in which to consider reconstruction and reconciliation. Not one single minute of breathing space was allowed. Everybody knows the sequel. The supporters of al-Qaeda, led by a Jordanian jailbird named Abu Musab al-Zarqawi, launched a frenzied campaign of murder and sabotage. They not only slew unveiled women and secular journalists and teachers, they not only set off bombs in Christian churches — Iraq's population is perhaps 2% Christian — and shot or maimed Christians who made and sold alcohol. They not only made a video of the mass shooting and throat-cutting of a contingent of Nepalese guest workers who were assumed to be Hindu and thus beyond all consideration. These atrocities might be counted as more or less routine. They directed the most toxic part of their campaign of terror at fellow Muslims. The mosques and funeral processions of the long-oppressed Shiite majority were blown up. Pilgrims coming long distances to the newly accessible shrines at Karbala and Najaf did so at the risk of their lives. In a letter to his leader Osama bin Laden, Zarqawi gave the two main reasons for this extraordinarily evil policy. In the first place, as he wrote, the Shiites were heretics who did not take the correct Salafist path of purity. They were thus a fit prey for the truly holy. In the second place, if a religious war could be induced within Iraqi society, the plans of the Crusader West could be set at naught. The obvious hope was to ignite a counter-response from the Shia themselves, which would drive Sunni Arabs into the arms of their bin Ladenist protectors. And, despite some noble appeals for restraint from the Shiite Grand Ayatollah Sistani, it did not prove very difficult to elicit such a response. Before long, Shia death squads, often garbed in police uniforms, were killing and torturing random members of the Sunni Arab faith. The surreptitious influence of the neighbouring Islamic Republic of Iran was not difficult to detect, and in some Shia areas also it became dangerous to be an unveiled woman or a secular person. Iraq boasts quite a long history of intermarriage and intercommunal cooperation. But a few years of this hateful dialectic soon succeeded in creating an atmosphere of misery, distrust, hostility, and sect-based politics. Once again, religion had poisoned everything. In all the cases I have mentioned, there were those who protested in the name of religion and who tried to stand athwart the rising tide of fanaticism and the cult of death. I can think of a handful of priests and bishops and rabbis and imams who have put humanity ahead of their own sect or creed. History gives us many other such examples, which I am going to discuss later on. But this is a compliment to humanism, not to religion. If it comes to that, these crises have also caused me and many other atheists to protest on behalf of Catholics suffering discrimination in Ireland, of Bosnian Muslims facing extermination in the Christian Balkans, of Shia Afghans and Iraqis being put to the sword by Sunni jihadists, and vice versa, and numberless other such cases. To adopt such a stand is the elementary duty of a self-respecting human, but the general reluctance of clerical authorities to issue unambiguous condemnation, whether it is the Vatican in the case of Croatia, or the Saudi or Iranian leaderships in the case of their respective confessions, is uniformly disgusting. And so is the willingness of each flock to revert to atavistic behaviour under the least provocation. No, Mr. Prager, I have not found it a prudent rule to seek help as the prayer meeting breaks up, and this, as I told you, is only the letter B. In all these cases, anyone concerned with human safety or dignity would have to hope fervently for a mass outbreak of democratic and republican secularism. I did not have to travel to all these exotic places in order to see the poison doing its work. Long before the critical day of September 11, 2001, I could sense that religion was beginning to reassert its challenge to civil society. When I am not operating as a tentative and amateur foreign correspondent, I lead a rather tranquil and orderly life, writing books and essays, teaching my students to love English literature, attending agreeable conferences of literary types, taking part in the transient arguments that arise.